Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for dropping by this channel and this video. So like everybody else, I just want to be happy. Who doesn't? And we're all seeking it. And that's actually a really profound thing to meditate on. I like to reflect on it. Everything I do, everything everybody else does is always a search for happiness. You might use different words, maybe a search for peace, search for joy, a search for love. Don't want to get too fixated on, but searching for it. Let's just call it it. So, and there's a whole lot of theories out there about how to get it. What I've boiled it down to is that there's two sources of happiness. And happiness isn't the best word, but peace, happiness, joy, love, some sweet combination, wisdom, compassion, some combination of all those things. The big it. And there's two sources. One is conditional and one is unconditional. Most people aren't familiar with unconditional happiness. So I'll start with conditional. Conditional happiness is when things line up and you're happy. It's a beautiful day. So you're happy. You ask someone out. They say yes. So you're happy or joyful or maybe elated. You have a really good dance, a good yoga class, a good massage, and you feel good, i.e., things got arranged in a harmonious configuration, and then there's joy, peace, pleasure, happiness. That's conditional happiness. It's dependent on conditions, right? When those conditions are there, you're happy, and when they're not there, you're not. And sometimes when the opposite of what you want, then you're miserable. But that's another story. So that's mostly what people think of as happiness. When they're, as they say, ducks are in a row, when things line up, when good things happen, then they feel happy. But there's a whole other kind of happiness that most people maybe aren't so familiar with, unconditional happiness. That isn't dependent on conditions. This is more of a spiritual, religious, or mystical, where you find happiness through connection to higher power, however you name him, her, or it. So that feeling of connection, the experience of connection, and there's different words. Connection's one word, communion, union, closeness. Whenever I feel that, I just instantly feel whole and good and at peace and satisfied. So it's a very different type of happiness. It's not dependent on arranging things. It's more like just one thing, just connecting to it, to the big it, to the source, to source. Some people call it God, Allah, Christ. And then that satisfies and gives pleasure. And that's a very radical idea. Most people have never even thought about it. And I wouldn't have thought about it, but I started to pursue Eastern religions, which talked about enlightenment. I'll say Eastern philosophy, which talked about enlightenment. And the idea of enlightenment was being unconditionally happy, unconditionally peaceful. First of all, I didn't know such a thing was even possible. But it's really been profound for me to look at what is happiness? What causes happiness? Is there a happiness available to us that doesn't depend on people, places, and things? And my experience and my answer is yes. And it's not just my answer. Spiritual seekers cross culture, cross history, cross tradition have said that there's a great reality that can satisfy us, that can give us peace and love and joy. They have different names for it and different prescriptions for how to find that. So now there's all sorts of interesting issues and ideas related to and connected to that, how to balance the two, how to balance conditional or unconditional happiness. Is it okay to pursue both? The extremes are a monk or nun who only pursues unconditional happiness. And let's say a quote worldly person, don't really like that phrase, but or a hedonist, don't really like that word either, but so let's just say a monk or a nun versus someone who only seeks happiness from people, places, or things. Nothing, quote, spiritual or religious or mystic, constantly seeking good conditions. It's not bad. I just am offering it to contrast the two. So that's a big part of what my life is about, is balancing the two. I aspired to be a monk for a long time, but that's just really not my path, really not my way. My way is about balancing those two. That's a big part of what this channel is about. So I hope that was helpful and inspiring to some of you. Be curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for dropping by. Big love.